We've all encountered people in our lives whose egos seem larger than life, whose words sting like arrows, whose actions seek to provoke or diminish us. But what if I told you that the most powerful way to handle these moments is not through words or actions of our own, but through the power of silence? Silence is not the absence of words, it's the presence of strength. It's the quiet confidence that needs no validation, no response. In the face of someone trying to challenge your worth, your silence has the potential to unravel their ego piece by piece. It's not about giving them more ammunition to attack. It's about showing them that your peace is untouchable, that your strength doesn't need their recognition. Today, we'll talk about how your silence can be your greatest weapon, how it can break through the defenses of those whose only power lies in their ability to provoke. And in that silence, you will find your true strength. So let's dive into the power of silence and how it can destroy their ego without you lifting a finger. Silence, often misunderstood as weakness or avoidance, is actually one of the most powerful tools we possess as human beings. When we choose silence, we don't just hold back from speaking. We make a conscious decision to control our emotions, our reactions, and our thoughts. In a world that constantly encourages us to speak, to argue, and to stand our ground at all costs, silence becomes an act of courage, self-discipline, and above all, wisdom. It is through silence that we reflect the highest form of self-control, the most profound sense of wisdom, and the deepest level of confidence. To truly understand the power of silence, we must first examine how it reflects self-control. Self-control is not just about resisting temptation or holding back from indulgence. It is about the ability to regulate our emotional responses and our impulses. It is the ability to choose how we react in any given situation, especially when provoked. In many ways, silence is the ultimate demonstration of self-control. When someone challenges you or tries to provoke you, responding in silence requires a level of discipline that cannot be easily achieved. It's easy to lash out, to retaliate with words, or to engage in a confrontation. These responses come naturally, as they are often driven by ego, pride, or the desire to assert our dominance. However, choosing silence in such moments is a conscious decision to not let those external factors dictate our behavior. Instead, we assert control over ourselves, not letting the actions or words of others cause us to lose our sense of peace and composure. By embracing silence, we are telling the world that we do not need to defend ourselves through aggression or verbal retaliation. We do not need to prove our worth through noisy responses or fiery comebacks. Silence, in this sense, is a form of emotional mastery. It is the ability to remain unmoved, to not let the storm outside disturb the calm within. When we choose to remain silent, we do so from a place of inner strength, not weakness. This kind of self-control is not about suppressing emotions, but about consciously deciding not to let our emotions control us. In many instances, silence in the face of provocation can be a direct reflection of wisdom. Wisdom is not merely the accumulation of knowledge or experience, it is the ability to discern when to act and when to hold back, when to speak and when to remain silent. The wise person knows that not every situation requires a response. Not every insult needs a retort, and not every argument needs to be won. Silence in these moments becomes a demonstration of our understanding of the bigger picture. We recognize that engaging in petty squabbles or fueling someone else's ego with our own words serves no meaningful purpose. We understand that sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all. There are countless situations in life where silence can be far more effective than any words. When someone tries to diminish us, insult us, or provoke us, they are often trying to feed their own ego, to get a reaction out of us that will validate their sense of self-worth. By responding in silence, we deny them that satisfaction. We refuse to feed into their need for validation, and we assert our independence from their ego. This is where the true power of silence lies. It is not just about avoiding conflict or shutting down conversation. It is about demonstrating our awareness of the dynamics at play, our ability to see through the ego-driven actions of others, and our decision to rise above it. In this way, silence becomes a form of intelligence. It is not a passive retreat. It is an active choice based on an understanding of what truly matters and what is worth our energy. Furthermore, silence reveals confidence in its purest form. Confidence is often misunderstood as being loud, brash, or outspoken. We associate confidence with the ability to speak our minds, to assert ourselves, and to stand firm in the face of opposition. While these traits are certainly elements of confidence, they do not define it entirely. True confidence, the kind that comes from within, is rooted in the ability to remain calm, composed, and unshaken, even in the face of challenges. Confidence does not require constant validation or recognition. It does not need to prove anything to anyone. The most confident individuals are often the ones who are comfortable in their own skin, who know their worth and do not need to shout it from the rooftops. When we choose silence in response to provocation, we demonstrate that we are secure in ourselves. We are not threatened by the words or actions of others, nor do we feel the need to assert ourselves through aggressive or defensive tactics. Our silence communicates that we are comfortable with who we are and that we do not need to prove ourselves to anyone. This is the essence of true confidence. The ability to remain centered and calm, to maintain our peace and dignity even when others try to shake us. In many cases, silence can also serve to disarm those who seek to provoke us. When someone is trying to get a rise out of us, they are typically relying on the idea that they can control our emotions. They want us to react, to become angry or defensive, because that gives them a sense of power over us. However, when we choose silence, we take away their ability to control us. We refuse to give them the satisfaction of seeing us react. In doing so, we disarm them. They are left with nothing to work with, no response to fuel their ego. Their attempts to provoke us become futile, and their own ego is left exposed, vulnerable, and often deflated. In many ways, silence is like a mirror. When we respond to negativity with silence, we reflect the true nature of the situation back to the other person. Their actions, words, or behaviors no longer have the desired effect on us, and they are left to confront the emptiness of their own attempts to provoke. In this way, silence becomes a powerful tool of deflection, redirecting the focus away from us and onto the other person's ego. Moreover, silence gives us space to observe and understand the situation more clearly. When we remain quiet, we are not caught up in the heat of the moment or the emotional whirlwind created by the other person. Instead, we create room to think, to assess, and to respond thoughtfully, if at all. In this way, silence allows us to maintain clarity and perspective even in the most challenging situations. We are not driven by impulse or knee-jerk reactions, but are able to step back and see the bigger picture. This is why silence is so effective in disarming others. It prevents us from reacting out of anger or frustration, and instead allows us to remain objective, calm, and poised. Ultimately, the act of choosing silence over confrontation or verbal retaliation is an expression of our inner strength. It is the recognition that we do not need to engage in every battle, fight every fight, or answer every insult. We know that we are capable of maintaining our peace and composure even in the face of negativity. This inner strength comes from a place of deep self-awareness and understanding. We realize that the ego-driven actions of others cannot affect us unless we allow them to. When we choose silence, we choose to protect our own peace and well-being rather than allowing someone else's ego to disturb it. Silence, when chosen deliberately over reaction, is not merely the absence of sound. It is a profound expression of inner peace and emotional mastery. In moments of tension, conflict, or provocation, the natural human instinct is often to respond, to react in a way that defends our honor, asserts our point of view, or proves our strength. Yet in these moments, the choice to remain silent carries a deeper significance. It reveals something far more powerful than any words or reactions could convey: the ability to preserve our inner calm despite external pressures. When you choose silence, you are showing that the ego of others cannot disturb your inner peace. Their attempts to provoke you, to stir you into action or reaction, fail because you are not tethered to their need for validation or conflict. This type of silence requires strength, clarity, and a deep understanding of self, and it is a reflection of a more intentional form of living. Choosing silence over reaction is a conscious decision to not let the ego of another person dictate your emotional state. Often people act out of their own insecurities, their need for control, or their desire to elevate themselves at the expense of others. They may use words, gestures, or actions that are designed to provoke, to get a rise, or to engage us in some kind of power struggle. In these moments, the instinct is to respond, perhaps with anger, frustration, or even with an attempt to outwit them. However, when we allow ourselves to be swept up in these reactions, we surrender our power to them. We allow their behavior to control us, to pull us away from our center, and to disrupt the peace we have within. However, when we choose silence, we are making a powerful statement. We are saying that the external forces, be it the words, attitudes, or actions of others, cannot shake our inner equilibrium. We recognize that we do not need to engage with every challenge, nor do we need to meet every confrontation with a counteraction. We choose not to waste our energy on something that has no lasting significance to our sense of self. By not reacting, we protect our inner peace and keep ourselves anchored in a state of calmness that cannot be disturbed. The importance of this choice lies in the way it dismantles the power of the ego. Ego thrives on conflict. It thrives on engagement, whether it is through arguments, verbal sparring, or emotional reactions. The ego seeks validation, approval, and recognition, often at the expense of others. It feeds on moments of tension, seeing them as opportunities to assert itself and prove its dominance. When we choose silence, we take away the fuel that the ego needs to continue its existence. We deny it the satisfaction of drawing us into its web of provocations. The more we refuse to react, the more powerless the ego becomes, both in others and in ourselves. Silence is not a passive act. It is not about avoiding confrontation or retreating from life's challenges. Rather, it is an active and intentional choice. It is the recognition that by remaining silent, we retain control over ourselves. We acknowledge that our peace of mind is far more important than engaging in a battle that will only serve to further feed the ego. By remaining silent, we demonstrate our understanding that the need for external validation or engagement is secondary to our own internal sense of worth and peace. The choice to remain silent is an assertion of strength, of emotional maturity, and of self-awareness. There is an underlying wisdom in choosing silence. It comes from the understanding that words, once spoken, cannot be taken back. They can cause harm, escalate conflicts, or feed into negative cycles. The wise person knows that not every issue requires a verbal response, and not every situation demands an argument. Sometimes the best response to an attack, criticism, or challenge is no response at all. In these moments, silence allows us to observe and reflect. It gives us space to pause, to consider our next move carefully, and to avoid reacting impulsively. The act of silence allows the emotions to settle and the mind to clear, giving us the opportunity to choose a more thoughtful response, or, in many cases, to simply walk away, knowing that we have kept our dignity intact. Furthermore, silence creates a powerful sense of distance between us and the other person's ego. When we remain silent, we refuse to be drawn into the drama or negativity that they may be projecting. Their words may be sharp, their intentions may be hostile, but by not engaging, we demonstrate that we are not affected by their attempts to provoke us. We are not available for their games of manipulation, control, or conflict. This distance allows us to maintain our emotional stability and keeps us from being swept up in their emotional turmoil. Choosing silence also shows that we have a deeper understanding of the nature of conflict itself. Conflict often arises when two egos collide, when two individuals or groups assert their own sense of self at the expense of the other. This is particularly true in situations where one person tries to diminish the other, whether through insults, criticism, or attacks. In such moments, the ego wants to defend itself, to prove its worth, and to assert its dominance. But silence disrupts this dynamic. It prevents the ego from feeding into the conflict and denies it the satisfaction of eliciting a response. By remaining silent, we break the cycle of ego-driven confrontation and move away from the need to prove ourselves. We allow the situation to dissolve on its own, rather than adding fuel to the fire. At a deeper level, choosing silence reflects a strong sense of self-confidence. It is often the case that those who react impulsively to provocation are uncertain of themselves or seeking validation through external means. They feel the need to justify their existence, to defend their worth, or to prove their strength through their words and actions. True confidence, however, is not about proving anything. It is about being secure in who we are, regardless of what others think, say, or do. When we choose silence in the face of provocation, we show that we are not seeking approval or recognition. We are comfortable with ourselves, with our own strength, and with our own value. We do not need to engage in conflict to affirm our self-worth. Silence also allows us to take control of our emotions. It is easy to be swept up in anger, frustration, or resentment when someone insults us or tries to provoke us. These emotions are powerful, and when they are allowed to take over, they can cloud our judgment and our ability to think clearly. Choosing silence, on the other hand, gives us the opportunity to regain control over our emotional state. It allows us to pause, breathe, and respond from a place of calm rather than from a place of anger. It is through silence that we can process our feelings without being overwhelmed by them, allowing us to make more rational, measured decisions about how we wish to engage with the situation. Moreover, silence reveals a deeper level of emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is the ability to recognize, understand, and manage our own emotions, as well as the emotions of others. It involves being aware of our emotional state in any given moment and choosing how we wish to respond. Choosing silence over reaction demonstrates a high level of emotional intelligence, as it requires an awareness of the emotional dynamics at play. By remaining silent, we not only prevent ourselves from being dragged into an emotional response, but we also gain insight into the motives of the other person. We recognize that their actions are driven by their own insecurities, needs, and emotions, and we are able to respond, or not respond, from a place of understanding rather than from a place of judgment or reactivity. In choosing silence, we also create an opportunity for growth. Conflict and provocation often trigger emotional responses that reveal underlying fears, insecurities, and unresolved issues within us. By choosing silence, we allow ourselves the time and space to reflect on these triggers and examine why they provoke such a strong reaction. In doing so, we gain insight into our own emotional landscape and have the opportunity to heal and grow. Silence, therefore, not only prevents us from reacting impulsively, but also provides an opportunity for introspection and personal development. Ultimately, choosing silence over reaction is a practice in mastery, the mastery of our emotions, our thoughts, and our actions. It is the recognition that we are in control of how we respond to the world around us. By remaining silent, we demonstrate that we do not need to engage with every challenge, to justify our existence, or to prove ourselves through confrontation. Instead, we maintain our inner peace, knowing that the ego of others cannot shake our sense of self. In doing so, we not only protect our own peace, but also elevate the quality of our lives, for we become less affected by the outside world and more centered within ourselves.